Shabbat Shalom. When we roll open a Sefer Torah, what we see is monochrome, pale parchment, dark ink, black and white, which are the only colors that a human being can see when we are born. If we were to color the scroll, it would no longer be kosher. And yet we can very easily imagine what the Torah would look like if it were in color. Black and white, sure, for the darkness of creation, but then giving way to green for the Garden of Eden, gray and indigo and blue for the flood, and then the rainbow. Shades of desert and sky exploding into technicolor for the Joseph story, midnight for the Exodus, fire for the mountain, gold and silver and bronze for the Mishkan, and so on and so on. If today's Parsha had a color, it would be red. It's red for the heifer, the red cow with which it begins, which is turned into ashes and used to cleanse the people from the taint of death. And as Frida has pointed out, it is red too on an emotional level for the impulsiveness and the loss of control that make it tell, as Frida taught us, the same story of rage, not once, not twice, but 3 times over. But there's also a third kind of red. And that third kind of red takes us on a different journey. In preparing the heifer, Eliezer the priest is commanded to take cedar and hyssop and something called tola'at shani. I'm going to call that for the moment a red thread, and to throw them into the flames of the sacrifice. And our rabbis teach in a midrash that the cedar and the hyssop represent what in literature we call a merism, 2 extremes that imply the existence of everything in the in-between. Like when we say A to Z, we mean all of the letters of the alphabet. So too for cedar and hyssop. Cedar for the greatest, the tallest, the most exalted, and the most proud of us. Hyssop for the lowliest and most humble, in order, say the rabbis, to teach that death will come for all of us, regardless of our status. But the rabbis don't teach about the red thread. So I want to pay it some attention this morning. If we look for other places where it appears in the Torah, for example, we find that it is used in the ceremony of purification for the Matzorah, the person who was stricken by the mysterious physical and spiritual disease that is called Sara'at. And Tola'at Shani, that red thread, is used in the offering that is made when they are rehabilitated, when they are healed, and they come back into the camp. And along with other colors, Tola'at Shani is woven into the screens and the curtains of the Mishkan, the sanctuary. And it's rare. That's all we have of it in the Torah. So we must ask, what does it mean? I went to the dictionary. Of course, I went to the dictionary. Tola'at is the word for a worm. So it's something long and thin, which is how it comes to mean thread. But Shani was a surprise. Shani is not a rhythm word, which gives us the word Shana for the year, and it's not a repetition word, which gives us Shnayim, number 2 in Hebrew, or Mishnah, the repetition. But it's a third meaning, and like the color of the thread, it is rare. Shani, at its root, means something that is beautiful, or something that shines. It's a very sweet euphony between the Hebrew and the English there, shani and shining. It's a red thread that shines, that we can see. So what's it doing where we find it in the Torah, and what's it doing for us this morning in this parsha? We can allow that the Mishkan was beautiful and it shone. It belongs there. But what does a red thread have to do with a person who has just been very, very sick and is now healed? And what does it have to do with a person who has just been bereaved, who needs to be freed from the taint and the touch of death? For that, we need to go outside the Torah. We need to go to the book of Joshua, which we never read in order in the liturgical cycle, and to the story where the people are moving into the land and are camped outside the city of Jericho. Two spies enter the city and find an ally there, a woman who is called Rachav, who gives them shelter. She hides them on her roof. And when the time comes for the Israelites to take the city, they tell her, I'll do it in Hebrew first, Hinei anachnu va'im ba'aretz et tikvat chut hashani hazeh tikshuri b'chalon. When we come into the city, you will have tied this tikva of red thread into the window that you let us down from. And you'll have taken all of your family into the house with you, so they come to no harm. Notice the odd word out in that sentence, tikva. They say it very clearly. She needs to tie a tikvat chut hashani, a tikva of scarlet thread, into her window. But when we hear the word tikva, we understand that it means hope. So what is hope doing in this story and in the Mishkan, and for the person who's been healed and for the person who's been bereaved? What is hope doing here, and why is it described in this way? I'm going to ask us to hold that question while I try and do that difficult thing of describing a picture. I'm going to take us across the sea to England in the 19th century and to the work of the symbolist painter George Frederick Watts. He was putting together a series called House of Life, which was intended to represent the emotions and aspirations of all of human life in a universal symbolic language. One of those paintings is of a young, blindfolded woman. She's in rags. She's sitting on the globe of the world, and a storm of blues and greys and greens, which were colours that Watts very rarely used, swirls around her. And in her arms, she's holding a lyre, a biblical harp. And her head is bent towards it, and her eyes are blindfolded, and on the lyre, there is only one string. And above her head, very, very faintly, one star is shining. Do you see it in your minds? The contemporary critics said, oh, the title of this painting should be Despair. But Watts called it Hope. Hope is a single string on that woman's lyre, and hope, too, for us, is a single string. That word tikva comes from somewhere, because in biblical times, when you measured something, you did it with a thread, a kav, and that gets verbalized into kava, to wait or to hope, and becomes the noun tikva. Or to put it another way, sorry, Emily Dickinson, hope does not have feathers. Hope is a red, shining thread, just like the red that is the first color that a human baby is capable of perceiving. And that's why, in the middle of this red parsha, we find the red thread. And that is why these threads appear where they do in the Torah. In the Mishkan, where the relationship between the people and the divine is often at risk of breaking. In healing, when we re-enter the world completely changed, completely vulnerable. And in the presence of death itself, hope is there. Especially hope is there. And it turns out that modern psychology agrees with the Torah. We should not be surprised by this. Psychiatrist Dr. Adam Stern describes hope as both a shield and a path. If we are able to foster some positivity in adversity, if we reach out for joy and comfort even in the midst of pain, it has a way of shielding us and protecting us from the pain itself. And Arthur Brooks, the happiness specialist, points out that optimism and hope are not the same thing. Optimism is the belief that somehow things will turn out okay, that somehow we will get through whatever it is. But hope is a conviction that we can act in a way that will make things better. We can't change the situation, we can't change the triggering nature of the situation, but we can remind ourselves that we have power and agency over our own reactions, and whatever it is, we can find a thread inside ourselves to catch hold of and know that we will get through it. Hope isn't a feeling. Hope is a choice. It is the choice to reach for that single thread. And I hope you'll let me take these ideas just one iteration further. Go back to the window in Jericho and the cluster of scarlet thread hanging in the window. That tikva was not a single thread. Right at the beginning of the Torah, at the time of the waters of creation, the divine orders the waters to gather together into a single place. And the command is Yikavu Hamayim, same word, same tikva word, the same letters in Hebrew that sit at the heart of hope, but this time they imply not a singularity, but a plurality. Not one thread, but many threads. Not a single shining line, but a luminous cord with other threads joining it as it unspools around this room and into the city and out into the world, a cord that is made of our choices and our reactions and our agency. And it stretches and it expands. And in that cord, if an individual thread breaks, it is repaired by the others so that it can shine again. That is a tikva. So as we read this red parsha this week, and we are worn out by all the broken promises around us, and by sickness, by fear, by anguish, by death, it's an appropriate time to remind ourselves that there is a shining thread. And our work this week is to seek it out in ourselves, to weave it together with each other's, to reinforce each other's threads when we are broken, to weave that cord, to hang it in the window, and to remember to hope. Shabbat Shalom.